So I made you co-host. In case you need, were you hoping to use any like breakout rooms today, or?
Okay.
Did you want to do any breakout rooms at any point?
Maybe I will. It will depend a bit on the flow of the talk,
Yeah.
but it's possible that I do it. Yeah.
Cool. Just let me know.
Okay. Is it something I can do, or you have to do it for me, right?
Yeah, I think I can set it up for you. So just give me a shout and we can get that set up for you.
Okay.
But otherwise, you should be able to share your screen if you need to, or anything else. Cool. So yeah, you want to give it another minute while some more people are joining, or do you want to just go ahead and dive in?
We can wait for 1 minute, and
cool.
while we wait for 1 minute before people come in, lots of us have had some issues with our vision before we were interested in natural vision improvement. And I would like to ask each of you to think for a moment, the moment where you first noticed you had problems with your vision. If you remember how old you were, and maybe what was going on in that moment of your life, what was happening in the family, with your parents or your partner or your job, or your main activity, if there were some specific things going on. And if there was something like this happening, if there's anything remarkable, noticeable that happened when your vision started getting worse, what can you imagine was the function of your vision decreasing? What did it serve? What did it allow you to do? What did it keep you from doing? And maybe while you're having a look at that, you can notice how this vision diminishing was serving you in some way at that specific moment. And maybe after the situation changed, but nobody knew anything on why the vision had decreased, and instead of going through the emotional transformation or support or integration that would have been useful for whatever you had been facing, well, someone else diagnosed that you had a problem with your vision and you wore glasses, and then maybe there were years going by before you found natural vision improvement in a way or another, and that you gained your sight back. So if what I quickly mentioned as a little experiment resonated with you in any way, well, this is more or less what I'm going to talk about today in the talk. And I don't know if there's more people coming. Okay, I read in the chat, Claudia says, I was 3 years old when I got my first pairs of glasses, hyperopia with convergent squint. I don't remember what was going on other than sister born when I was 1, another car accident on my corner. We'll look real quick. Okay, well, if you want to write something on the chat about what you have quickly found out with this little experiment, maybe we can go over it later on. But anyway, I'm going to share with you a bit of my journey with natural vision improvement, with vision and natural vision improvement. And then I will share with you a frame that I use with my clients and my students that is helpful maybe 80% of the time. I'm not going to say that it's like a universal law and that it works all the time for everyone, but very, very often it's very useful. And when it hits, for me, usually it's one of the keys, the fundamental keys for a profound change in vision from eyesight to insight, from insight to eyesight. and then it's very useful. So, okay. So I was born with strabism and amblyopia and a very big myopia in the other eye. And I was probably very fortunate that my grandfather was a medical surgeon very prestigious at the time in Spain, and he happened to know the best specialists in the country of anything needed. And when I was 6 months old and we were visiting my grandparents in the south of Spain, my parents asked if he would know an ophthalmologist that could help me, because visibly I had a big problem with my eyesight. And my grandfather advised for a professor at the University of Granada. And at the time, when we're talking the previous millennium, the previous century, I was born in 73, so early 74, my grandfather advised to go see this doctor, ophthalmologist, professor at the university, who knew that it was possible to improve vision with exercises. I know this term doesn't please everyone in the room, but that's what they said. And so my parents brought me to see this colleague of my grandfather, a lady. And at first she was like, why do you bring this baby? She's too young. And then she looked at me and she said, very good idea, you brought her so early, we can do something about it. So this lady, this ophthalmologist, suggested exercises, stimulations, things, patches. My parents did that with me. And when I was 1 year old, I had perfect vision, far, near, day, night. And excuse me if my language is not very precise, I'm Spanish, and I don't talk about this very often in English. So bear with me, and thank you for your patience and tolerance. So anyway, 1 year old, and I have a very, very good eyesight. And I grew with a very strong identity of having a very good vision. Everyone told me all the time that I had lynx vision, eagle's vision. And this was one of the stories my parents kept telling me every birthday, because it was from my early life. So every birthday they would tell me the story of how I improved my vision, And then fast forward, I was 23, living in France, studying in France, where I live at the moment. And one day I woke up seeing double, very blurry, and I panicked. I really, really panicked. The day before I had my perfect vision that I was identified with, and the day after I was seeing double and extremely blurry. And in panic, I called my mom in Spain and told her, well, how scared I was and how afraid and what was going on. And she even panicked even more than I did. So she was like, call an ophthalmologist, don't tell me about this problem. And I was like, of course, this is a good idea. So I picked up the yellow pages. So it was a while ago, no internet at the time yet. I picked up the yellow pages and started calling ophthalmologist after ophthalmologist, optometrist after optometrist. And there was one who could give me an instant appointment. So later on, I discovered this was an extremely bad idea. You should never go to empty restaurants. If they're empty, it's a good reason. It's for a good reason. But anyway, so I went to the first person that had space and asked him, yesterday I saw perfectly, today I don't see perfect. I see blurry and double. What do I do? What happened to my perfect vision? Question entered this year, went out this other year. And he just wanted to put me in front of a machine with glasses and numbers and letters, and to let him know when I would see clear. And of course, I know you've all had stories that are probably similar to this one, and you've all had your personal breakthroughs and personal growth stories with vision. But since it's one of the first times that I'm meeting most of you, it's a way also to get to know each other. So anyway, they put me these glasses in front of the eyes, and there was a moment I saw better. So I said, now it's the best. And so he wrote down so many dioptries, degrees of myopia, and so many degrees of astigmatism. And I was like, yes, but I didn't have them yesterday. Why do I have them today? It went this year, went out the other year, no answers, no attempt even to answer, just an invitation to buy glasses immediately, and that I would have to wear them all my life. And I remember having felt this extreme anger and frustration, because I identified so strongly with my perfect vision. I couldn't accept just this dogmatic answer. And I was already becoming a scientist, like doing not yet a PhD, but I was heading towards a PhD. And I was like, I need to find the cause, whatever. Okay, this was the effect, but what was the cause? And if we find the cause, then maybe we can change it. So anyway, no answer. I went out the disappointment, and I ripped the prescription and threw it to the garbage. And I was like, I won't wear glasses until I understand what happened to me. And back home, out of frustration, I called all my friends, and one of them told me, well, I don't promise that my doctor will find the solution, but what I can assure is that he will listen to you, point number one. Point number two, he will examine what's going on with you, okay? And point number three, he will try to understand what happened. I'm like, okay, I buy that. I'm in for that. So the day after, and the funny thing was this first appointment with the first ophthalmologist, it was winter, it was cold, it was dark, the building was full of marble. He was very not warm with me, like barely saying hi and just putting me in the machine and not considering me as a human being. I mean, there were lots of elements also like adding to stress and strain and yeah, not lack of human connection. And this second doctor, the appointment was by day. It was still winter, but it was by day. It was a sunny day, and the space was lots of light, and he was very welcoming and warm. And indeed, he asked me and looked at me, and we examined the thing together. I told him, he listened. And after some time spent together, he said, well, young lady, you have a sinusitis. So there's inflammation in the sinuses, and they're compressing your eyeball. And because they're compressing your eyeball, there's an error of refraction. So just take antibiotics for 7 days for the sinusitis. And when this is over, if your eyesight is not back to normal, come back and we'll have a look, but chances are that it will be fine. So I took the antibiotics. 7 days later, my eyesight was perfect again. And I remember having thought, if I had listened to the first guy and had taken, I had put the glasses immediately, probably I would have had to wear them all my life because the eyes get used to the glasses. And then I remembered also having thought, how many people may there be out there that for some reason that is just an instant reason, there's some tension or strain or whatever, something that's deforming the eyeball. And if they were in such panic as me, but not as stubborn wanting to understand the cause as me, they put some eyeglasses on and now they're wearing them for the rest of their life. But I kept on with my life. That was not my main interest at the moment. So I kept with my studies in sociology and doing my PhD, etc. By the way, I have always been interested in holistic health and healing. And since I was 16 or something. So it's been over 30 years that I'm studying lots of approaches. But anyway, I hadn't gone into vision yet, natural vision improvement yet. And when I was 34, at the time I was already a professor at the university in Lille, and I was invited as a guest researcher and teacher and professor at the University of Barcelona. And I was evaluating a scientific journal, reading lots of articles very quickly. So I printed it in very small print so I could do it faster. And I started noticing that I had to put things far from me. And then I went to the subway and I wasn't able to read the names of the stations. And I thought, okay, third time that I have problems with my vision. But now I know that it's possible to heal from that because I've done it twice already in my life. So maybe this time I can manage again. So by that time, I was already interested in the body-mind connection and the psychosomatic approaches to health. And I was familiar with the idea that you can consider any symptom like a messenger. In French, maladie, which means illness or sickness, if you take it, if you listen to the sound as you would do with the language of birds, this metaphorical language, what it means is the pain is telling you something. Maladie, the pain tells you something. So I had already spent a few years by that time studying, 5 years or so, studying the metaphors of symptoms, studying what is the message that a sickness or an illness is telling you. The way I got acquainted with this approach was Martin Brofman's body mirror system of healing. And maybe some of you are familiar with Martin Brofman. He wrote 3 books, and one of them, well, I have the Spanish version, but in English the name let's see, Improve Your Vision. Yeah, and he wrote a couple other books. I think he went to the Zurich International Holistic Congress, so maybe some of you know him. Anyway, so this third time, I went to an ophthalmologist to find what was the diagnosis this time, and they told me that I had developed presbyopia, which at age 34, it should be a crime. It should be a sin. It should be forbidden to have presbyopia at age 34, and astigmatism again. So anyway, this time I went for the diagnosis, but I wasn't interested in the prescription on the glasses. They gave me one, but I threw it as well, because what I wanted was the diagnosis so that I could go back to my, my theory book and look at what were the messages of those symptoms. So at that time, with this approach I had been studying, what these symptoms were telling me, and if you have experienced those symptoms, well, we will go over several of them at least. Well, if we have time, we could do like 15 or something. But what this was telling me was, first, astigmatism. You are confused concerning the values of your life. You have betrayed yourself. You are not following the path of your heart. You are doing something else to please someone else. And presbyopia was telling me, you find your life boring. The best of your life is behind, and you don't find what's coming exciting. So, okay, age 34, being the height of academic recognition, I had won 2 prizes at the university for my PhD, and I was a member of an editorial board of a scientific journal, and very promising career, blah, blah, blah. And my eyesight is telling me, you don't like this, you're bored with this. This is not your path. So, okay, so I had to have a very serious heart-to-heart conversation with myself and listen to my eyes and consider looking at what my eyes was telling me. I had given myself 2 months. I told myself, okay, you try to solve your vision and gain back your vision again with alternative approaches, and within 2 months, if in 2 months you have achieved that, end of the story. If not, then maybe you will take some glasses on. And so I had given myself 2 months to sort this problem, and my eyes were telling me, you're bored with your life and you have betrayed yourself. Okay, that was a slap in the face. So I had to be honest with myself and accept the fact that actually becoming a university professor was my father's dream, not mine, and my grandfather's dream, maybe not mine. And so I was obeying, being the good daughter, following the career that my father couldn't manage to have and that my grandfather would have wished for his children. And so, okay, so now what's making your heart sing? And as I said before, I have always been interested in holistic approaches to health and therapy. And so, okay, I stayed within the university, but I transformed the content of my profession. And now what I do is, how do you call that in English? Sociology, clinique, integrative, experiential. So experiential, integrative, clinical sociology. It sounds like big words because in the university you have to use those big words all the time to be taken seriously. But basically what it means is that being a sociologist, I allow myself to learn from any kind of science or not only science, but any tradition of knowledge, to integrate knowledge coming from all these disciplines and make a model that people can experience and they can learn from it. So that my research method is actually providing experiences to people. Anyway, it was a way to camouflage holistic healing and natural vision improvement into the university. So anyway, after this chapter, when I had this serious talk with myself about the astigmatism and presbyopia appearing again age 35, and within 2 months, I managed to see clear again, doing the inner work and releasing the emotions and taking decisions about what the course of my life would be. Well, since then, I have never had any more problems with my vision. And I remember having thought, okay, first time, it was thanks to an ophthalmologist, but basically you gain your vision back at a physical level with relaxation, exercise, stimulation, these kind of things. And the second time, you regained your vision back with a chemical solution, taking antibiotics and something rebalanced in your chemical system, and then you gain your vision back. And the third time, it was an emotional work, inner work, releasing emotions, considering your life, and you gain your vision back. So you found like 3 levels or 3 ways to gain your vision back. Maybe there's more. And that's when I started studying and researching and looking for other solutions. And well, in the model that I use nowadays with my students, so I teach them how to improve their vision at the physical level, at the chemical level, at the emotional level, at the mental level, with light and energy. And of course there's sunning, but there's also more woo-woo energy healing going there. But by that time, we have checked so many rational boxes that we can go into that direction a bit more. And then we talk about habits and how to make those automatic ways of looking so that you can, I mean, it takes as much time to look in a bad way and see worse and worse, or use your eyes properly and see better and better. So that's quickly the model. But anyway, the model I used. But anyway, as I said, this third time, when I became more autonomous about my vision and my eyesight, it was thanks to this psychosomatic approach of taking symptoms as metaphors, or taking sicknesses as messengers. And I have to say that most of this, as I said, I learned from Martin Brofman and his approach, but I have also done some research on my own and tried to understand also what were the roots of his approach. And this is what I would like to present to you. And thanks for having had the patience to listen to my very long introduction, walking with my personal path to come to this point. Anyway, so Martin Brofman in his classes used to mention Bates, and all the books that he had read when he was creating his model mentioned Bates. So at some point in time, he read Bates too. But when I have discovered Bates' methods later on, I can see also that there were like really some differences or some original parts in Brofman's approach. He was using a lot of PNL and a lot of meditations and visualizations and the Silva method and other things. Actually, in Martin's workshops, we were sitting most of the time. Like, we didn't do body movement or playing with patches or balls or swings or things like that. We were sitting and just doing inner work most of the time. And concerning this emotional part, when I read his books and talking with him, I noticed that he mentioned the works of Charles Kelly. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Charles Kelly. Okay, several of you are. Okay, so as far as I understood, reading what I found, he did his PhD in '58 in the New School of Social Research, and he was verifying all the findings of the exercises and the works he did with his students at the University of Columbia, with some collaboration with the optometric department. And the main idea behind Charles Kelly's thesis, well, as far as I understood and remember, he had myopia and he had released his myopia with the Bates method. And then he went on to study psychology, and when he studied psychology, he was acquainted with Wilhelm Reich's approach. Wilhelm Reich being this is like a tongue twist, tongue twister. Anyway, this is difficult to pronounce for me. So unorthodox, like a non-orthodox psychoanalyst. Yeah, so he had been one of the students of Freud, and he had became He had become very interested in the energy in orgasms and things like that, but that's not the direction we're going to go. He had also developed this hypothesis that is the basis for bioenergetics, which is that when you don't integrate, when you don't digest, when you don't fully live and experience the cycle of an emotion, this emotion becomes muscle strain, muscular tension in your body. And before I go further with these explanations and hypotheses and theories being combined, I would like to offer you a little exercise. Are you okay to do this with me? Okay. Okay, so I would like to ask you, if you are not sitting, I would suggest to sit down and put your feet on the ground. And if you have something that can hold your back comfortably so that you don't have to work, the chair can work, but not you. And you can put your hands on your lap with the palms facing up. Make your position as comfortable as possible. And you can close your eyes. And I invite you to take a long, deep breath. And at the best time for you, you can exhale. And you can inhale again. And at the best moment for you, you can exhale again. And for the third time, whenever it's the best moment for you, you can inhale again, deep and long. And at the best time for you, you can exhale. And while you are in this relaxed state, keep breathing normally. And with each breath, you will become more and more relaxed. And now I would like to ask you to think of a recent situation that you have lived with stress. It doesn't need to be dramatic or traumatic, just an uncomfortable situation that you lived with stress. And you can remember the scenery, where it happened, and who was there, and what happened, and how you felt, and what you thought. And as you think of all these elements, do you notice that some tension may have formed somewhere in your body? And now, could you, with your imagination, draw a circle around that part of your body? And could you imagine the color of that circle? And now you're going to release the tension with your breath until it disappears completely. So you can inhale deeply and slowly. And you can exhale again when it's comfortable for you. And you can inhale again, deeply and slowly. And when it's comfortable for you, you can breathe out again. And for a third time, you can inhale deeply and slowly and feel all your body relaxed again as it was before or even more. And you can exhale whenever is comfortable for you. And you can keep breathing normally, and with your breath, your body will relax more and more until you reach an even more relaxed and nice state as before. And whenever you like, you can open your eyes again. I would like to ask who has experienced tension somewhere in your body when you were thinking of this stressful situation, whatever it was. Okay, and even if it was for just a moment. Okay, so there's quite some of us. maybe not all, but quite some of us. Okay, so this illustrates very quickly the idea that whenever there's tension in your consciousness, there's emotional tension, this tension expresses as muscle tension somewhere in your body. And the part of your body where the tension shows has something to do with the reason for the tension, with the cause of the emotional or consciousness tension. And of course, the eyes are not foreign to that process. There's muscles in the eyes, and when we experience tension in our consciousness or in our emotions, this tension can appear in the eyes. So what Charles Kelly did was, okay, he had released his myopia by learning Bates' method, and he was familiar with the hypothesis of the external muscles participating in focusing and the mental tension participating and relaxation participating in eyesight. And then he was familiar with Wilhelm Reich's theory of okay, I've learned this in Spanish and in French, and the original is in English, and I don't know the word. So it's like when you build corazas corporales. So when the muscles become so tense that it becomes like an armor. I think that's the word I was looking for. So you build a body armor with the tension in your muscles. So what Charles Kelly did was, okay, Bates teaches us that if there's tension in the muscles, this can, well, create a myopic eye or a hyperopic eye, etc., etc. And Reich is telling us that emotional tension becomes tension in the muscles. What if the tension in the muscles that keep us from focusing correctly and create myopic or astigmatic or hyperopic eyes are actually emotional tensions? And so he did his PhD and he went on doing research afterwards. And already in his PhD, he found very close correlations between specific symptoms in the eyesight and emotional tensions. And well, in 1978, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote another book called New Techniques of Vision Improvement. And then Martin Brofman bumped into his works and he did an extension of that research. And Martin had a very pedagogic way of explaining these relationships between emotional strain and eye symptoms. And maybe you have been familiar also with some of these approaches by other authors, because I know there's other authors that also consider these psychosomatic relationships, but I'm going to share with you the ones that I have been using in my work by working with Martin Brofman, translating his workshops in Spain for 7 years and organizing workshops and learning from him. And also in the research that we have done at the University of Toulouse. A few years ago, we did a study with 450 people by questionnaires, trying to find specific situations that seem to be related with the origin of the symptom. In that research, we found that 82% of the people, when we asked them when did the eye symptoms start, 82% of the people spontaneously would mention a stressful time in their life. Like we didn't even have to ask, was it a stressful time? It appeared spontaneously, 82%. So that's a lot. And of those 18% that remained, 6% said things like, nothing particular, my father died. No big deal, I lost my job. I don't see anything special, we moved to another country. Well, I really cannot see what may have happened. I've been depressed all my life. Things like this. so probably we can add that one and say that it's 88% of the cases. And then in the 12 remaining percentage, people really didn't know what to say. Maybe they forgot, maybe it was a protection mechanism that they wouldn't be aware of it. So the fact that they were not able to mention it doesn't mean that the emotional cause wouldn't be there. But anyway, they couldn't identify it. But in 88% of the cases, they could. And we found relevant like impactful events that were related to different symptoms. So again, what I'm going to share with you now is a combination of what I learned with Martin Brofman and what we have found in this research. And hopefully it will resonate with your personal experience or the experience you have with your clients and your students, because I also know that many of us are aware of these emotional connections, and maybe sometimes we have a model to systematize them, maybe we don't. And also, I invite all of us, me included, to be also very respectful and careful when we present hypotheses on these models, because we can present a correlation is only something that is statistically frequent, not something that is like a universal law. And when we present it as a possibility, people remain free to say, oh, it makes sense, or no, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't resonate with me. We also know that there's individual differences, and it's very important to respect that so that people do not feel any type of pressure or symbolic violence or whatever. Well, I know you understand what I mean. So anyway, if we start with the model that I use for understanding the probable emotional cause, inner cause behind the symptom, I would like to start with myopia. So a myopic eye would be one with the oblique muscles being tense. And in terms of experience, then it means that the person can see near, but cannot see very well far. And if we take this space like a metaphor of my personal space, then it would mean that I can see what's close to me, but not what's far. So what am I doing with my energy? I am withdrawing myself. I'm withdrawing from the world. I'm withdrawing from a world that I see as threatening. So the emotion behind myopia very often is one of fear, insecurity. And this withdrawing of energy and this fear and insecurity very often happens at a young age, when there is some change of situation that the person is not yet strong enough to face. And it may be normal things like another child in the family being born. I mean, that's extremely natural and it happens in most families, but still, when it happens, maybe the baby becomes insecure about the love of the parents or the attention of the parents. Or it may be something as standard as starting school and there's a change of environments. The child has been at home with a known relationship with parents or grandparents, and now it goes to another environment with different rules and norms, and cannot move, cannot talk, maybe, and has to pay attention maybe to things that he's not interested in, and maybe there's sanctions, or maybe social interaction is not so easy. Anyway, things that are normal can be nevertheless a cause of insecurity and fear for children in a young age. So we have found that things like starting school, brother or sister being born, parents having discussions or divorcing, moving to another house or to another city, changes in school cycles, whatever the school cycles are in different countries, but every change in the school cycle may be a moment where myopia starts. Also, poverty starting, like body changes, and now the politics of attraction. Now I have to deal with the fact of being attractive or not being attracted, or being attracted to someone or not. I mean, all of this, it can create a moment of fear and insecurity in teenagers. Ending the studies, starting a job, being fired from a job, and for women having a child, having a first child, or having a child that feels as too much for what is handleable at that moment. So the moments where myopia starts very often are related with a change that the person is living with fear or insecurity. That's what we have very frequently found. So there's very often when people develop myopia, they use a compensation strategy because they are afraid, they feel insecurity. Very often they will become very controlling. They are wanting to control different possible futures to be prepared to any possible future. And of course, that takes a lot of mental activity. If A happens, then I will do 1. If B happens, I will do 2. And if C happens, I will do 3. And they have like an endless possibility of futures that they want to be prepared for, but there's only one future. And it's a lot of energy that's deployed, too much energy for just one future that's going to come. So in Spanish, we can use a play on words. When people become so controlling, they become precavidos, prevenidos, preparados, it's lots of words that have pre in front of it. So they are doing things in advance. They're planning a lot and being very prepared and things like that. But that takes a lot of energy. So the idea is to invite these people to just pay attention at whatever's happening in the screen, to use a metaphor. If it's part of the screen at this moment in the video game, then it's relevant. If it's not yet in the screen of the video game, it's not relevant yet, so you don't have to do anything about it. So the idea is to focus the attention on the present again, and not so much thinking of the future. And the other idea to develop for people having myopia, so that they can release it, is to release the future, let go of the future, and stay in the present. It's another way of saying it. So the present is a present when you're present. And yes, and so also to trust yourself and trust life, and to make sure you remind yourself that if you have been able to make it up to here, you will be able to face whatever situation comes up at this moment, so you can trust yourself and you can trust life. So very quickly, these would be some ideas around myopia and the emotions behind it, and how I usually talk about it. It's more fluent when I do it in Spanish, though. Anyway, very often, it's my experience, I don't know if it's yours, but it's my experience that very often the very act of talking about the symptoms and the possible emotional causes behind them, they create insights. And many times there's a change in the vision of the people, in the eyesight of the people at the very instant where they have the aha moment. I don't know if you've had that experience, but it's part of mine. So anyway, in any case, I hope it's in some way giving some more details to the things that you already know. So, and if we take the symptom that is the complementary in experience, let's go for presbyopia. So if we go back to this being my personal space, so with presbyopia, we can see things at the far, but we don't see things near anymore. So in terms of, if we use this space as a metaphor of energy again, then we're giving away our energy elsewhere, and we're not keeping the energy for us anymore. We're spreading the energy around. And presbyopia appears very frequently with age. Nowadays they tell us it's normal, which only means statistically frequent, not compulsory or biologically determined, just statistically frequent. So it's normal after 40. But 20 years ago, it was normal after 50. So in 20 years, we have lost 10 years of health. in our eyesight. And of course, there's lots of things related to habits and the way of life that we have, and screens and artificial light and movement and looking at the far or near, etc. But in terms of emotions, we can also look at that. Presbyopia happens after a certain age in the societies or social environments where older people are considered like junk that don't work for anything else anymore. And maybe my words are extreme, okay? But the idea is that if you look at societies where older people are regarded with respect and veneration because of their experience, it's interesting to notice that they almost don't have presbyopia. At least this was true for China 20 years ago. Maybe it's not anymore, but there's also been lots of social changes in China in the last years. And so it's, again, it's not a it's not something that's biologically determined. There's a lot of habits behind it, of course, but there's also this emotional component. When people feel well about themselves, they have self-esteem, they're interested in their own life, it doesn't matter how old they are, they can keep very good eyesight at the near as well. And well, probably you too. I have lots of my students that are over 70 and 80 and 90, and they can very well recover from presbyopia. And emotionally, this is one of the keys. Behind presbyopia, often the feeling is, there's feelings about the past. The look is at people are looking at the past with three kinds of emotions. Nostalgia, like things were better before. Nostalgia or guilt, why I did this or why I didn't do this, or anger, why he or she did that to me. But anyway, in all three of them, the look is in the past, as if the best of our lives had already happened and the options that we had are gone. We got married or we didn't, we had children or we didn't, we bought the house or we didn't, and now what are the options in our present life? Or we did our job and now we're retired. So the one important thing with presbyopia is to invite people to make the rest of their life the best of their life and to put focus again to the present. When people have felt that the best of their life is behind, it's people also that sometimes use these sentences, in my times, as if it was not their times anymore. And if you're alive, it's your time still, right? So if they stopped feeling the star in their own movie and the protagonist in their own film, then they are giving the energy to the people that they consider are the new stars of the movie. Their children, their spouse, their parents, the neighbors, or the children in Africa, or anywhere, anyway, people who are not them. And so with presbyopia, it's important to regain your central position in your own film, to be again the star of your movie. And so to take again your energy for you and take time for you and take your resources for you. And one thing that I, like the prescription of the doctor that I give people when they have presbyopia is positive selfishness. So what's the idea of positive selfishness? First, me. Then, me. After that, me. And if there's something left, for me. Okay, I know this sounds very exaggerated, and I see Orit laughing. Okay, it sounds very exaggerated, but we need to counterbalance the tendencies that they have had. And these people usually, they're very devotional with everyone else, and they put themselves like the 100th person in the list. So we need to counterbalance that, and so that they gain again their energy for themselves, and let other people be responsible for their own lives. And maybe we can meet to take a cup of coffee, but that they stop trying to solve everyone else's problems or issues, and that they really focus again energy on themselves. So, and I don't know if as I'm talking about these things, there's like bells ringing or things making sense either for yourselves or for people you know or for clients you have. well, anyway, I'll talk about a few more symptoms, and then if you want some time, we can also like talk and have some discussion and questions and answers. Anyway, so we talked about myopia, we talked about presbyopia, and let's talk about astigmatism. And let's say all the symptoms I'm talking about for now, I've had all of them. so I, of course, there's no judgment whatsoever behind them, or else I would be judging myself as well. I mean, we're all human, and we can go through times that are difficult, and we have to again be able to look at ourselves at the mirror and see ourselves with clarity and find out what we are doing to ourselves and decide to do other things to ourselves. So the third symptom I'm going to talk about is astigmatism, and behind astigmatism there is confusion and there is self-betrayal. The person is not recognizing her truth and is not living her truth authentically. And usually people do that not because they would like to lie or something like that, but because they are conforming to expectations that other people have on them, social expectations or expectations from the family. And sometimes they're unaware of it, sometimes they're unconscious, but there's expectations on what is to be a man and what is to be a woman and what is to be a daughter or a son or a father or a professional of such and such role. So the expectations can be on any kind of role, but the person is not listening to what's making her heart sing, but to the expectations around a given role and conforming to it. And that's a kind of betrayal. A few examples around this. For example, Christmas is close and a family is bringing a child to a big store with lots of things and toys and options to choose. And the parents tell the child, you have been such a great child this year that we want to offer you whatever present you like. And so they enter the shop and the child sees a red bicycle immediately that's telling, bring me home, bring me home, bring me home. And the baby, the child, instead of running to the bicycle and saying, I want the bicycle, I want the bicycle, says inside, I'm going to check some more in the store because maybe there's something better. This child hasn't listened to himself or herself already by not listening to the heart and the bicycle. So anyway, the thing continues, and sometime later, they find an actualized edition of an encyclopedia, and the child says, I want the encyclopedia. And inside, the dialogue is, if I choose the encyclopedia, my parents are going to be very proud of me, and it's going to work very well at school, and I'm going to have lots of approval from the teacher and from my parents. So the child decides to choose the encyclopedia, not because the child would like it, but to receive the approval. And the worst part is not choosing the encyclopedia, but convincing himself or herself that the encyclopedia is what he or she really wants. And that's where the confusion appears, because the true wish was the bicycle. Yes? So that's the kind of game that we play with ourselves behind astigmatism. And so my eyes were showing me very clearly, you are conforming to your father's dreams or your grandfather's dreams, but you're not paying attention to your own dreams, what's making your heart sing. I have another friend who is a writer, a self-taught writer, and she developed astigmatism also at some point in her life when she insisted. She was teaching herself writing and making her culture of writing and literature, and she forced herself into reading French authors, and she found them very boring, but she considered that it was a must that she would have to read them for her culture. And then so she developed astigmatism. And when she was doing this, one day in a bookstore, a book came out of the shelf and hit her head. And she was like, oh, let's look at this book. And it was a book written by some Sufis. I think it was Idris Shah or his brother, I don't know, one of those. And the sentence that was open in the sheet that she read was, organ that you don't use becomes poor, I mean, stops functioning. So she decided to throw away her glasses and with astigmatism. And she decided at the same time that the French were really boring and that she would stop reading them and she would rather read Sufi writers instead. And the astigmatism went away. Okay, so you have noticed probably that astigmatism and myopia come together very often. And it's possible to understand that, because why would you not do what you love to search for approval? Well, you do it when you are uncertain and insecure, or you are afraid of not being loved. So often these two things come together. Not all the time, but often. Okay, so we have talked about myopia, presbyopia, astigmatism. With hyperopia, which in experience is, okay, people, well, it's not really being able to focus very well, but better far. With hyperopia, it's also a reaction to a fear, a situation that causes fear or insecurity, but instead of freezing and hiding, the adaptation is more to run away. So people with hyperopia have more trouble to stay still or stay in a place because they don't feel safe if they stay. So they will tend to run away. So again, the idea for hyperopia is to encourage people to feel safe where they are, to know that maybe at the time it appeared, it was necessary to run away. Maybe it was the good adaptive response at the time for whatever fearful situation there was, but that now they're safe and they can stay and they can relax. And with astigmatism, of course, because I didn't really finish on that, with astigmatism, the good idea to follow is to ask yourself frequently, is this really what I want? Is this really what I feel? And to insist on being authentic. Okay, even if it's going to look weird or sound weird, and yeah, just insisting of being authentic and listening to your heart and being true to your heart. Let's see, so if we continue with metaphors of different symptoms, let me see. Okay, there's a wow from Nathan. If you don't mind, I would like to read what's in the chat. Wow, I remember one evening my elementary school had a big bingo game where the students and their parents were there. I won the game of bingo and had the choice of two prizes, a Philadelphia Eagles jacket or a Daredevil, a handheld vacuum cleaner. I didn't want either of them. I know my dad would have wanted me to get the eagle jacket and my mom would have wanted me to get the Daredevil. I wanted to please them both. I ended up getting the vacuum cleaner, going against what everyone thought I would pick, just to be a good boy and get the sports jacket. I think people pleasing is connected with vision problems. Wow, that's an amazing story that you're telling, Nathan. Okay. Yes, and Gloria says, plus the circle swing, variable swing, and central fixation for astigmatism. Of course, there's plenty of exercises or activities that you can do. I'm just focusing now on that emotional metaphor part. I also use lots of other things. Let's see. Okay, let's see. If we are talking about, for example, glaucoma, so it's an excess of pressure in the aqueous humor. Did I pronounce well in English? So it moves all the structures, and so it puts strains on the optic nerve, and it may the fibers may break, and it can lead to blindness. If we take the metaphor of glaucoma, there's too much pressure. Literally, the person is living with too much pressure. She's pressure, or he's pressuring herself, himself, and very often it has something to do with relationships. There's too much pressure in close relationships. With cataracts, what often has happened is the person metaphorically is putting the blinds on the windows, right? So like there's nothing interesting to look outside the windows anymore. Cataracts often happen with age, and they often happen at a time when the person has lost a very important motivation in her life. For example, people who are very attached to their job and they retire. Or for example, this is more of a female-ish kind of question. A woman whose dream was to see grandchildren and her children don't have kids. Or they do, but they live far away. Or they live close, but they don't get along with the partner. So whatever the reason, they cannot see the grandchildren. And so they're deprived for something that was a big motivation. Or, and this is more of a male-ish kind of situation, I have found this more in Mexico than in other parts. But anyway, I tell you, I let you know of the illustration, the example. Men that are very attached to their sexual life and they have problems with the prostate, and so the sexual life becomes not so interesting anymore, and they develop cataracts because that was a big motivation for them in life. So when there's cataracts in the metaphorical emotional aspect, the idea is to invite people to find again something that's very motivating and exciting about their life. And they will probably have to change the focus and the priorities because, well, I mean, maybe there's some margin of maneuver with the things that have changed, maybe not, but the idea is to find something that's really exciting and nice and interesting again. Let's see, with myodepsias, how do you pronounce that in English? Can you help me, Orit or Nathan? Okay, I'll talk about something else while we think about it. So with detachments, retina detachment or vitreous humor detachment, when there's detachments, usually it reflects relationship detachments. For example, someone has died suddenly, or someone has moved away to a faraway place where it's not possible to see them very often, or there has been a breakup of a love partnership or a friendship, a very dear friendship. There has been something that has torn in a relationship. These things are very often behind retina or vitreous humor detachment. When there's macular degeneration, the experience is that the center of the image is not so neat anymore. The metaphorical meaning is that the person has lost the center of her life, the central axis of her life. And the person doesn't see clear what's the central aim of her life. If you see, when I'm explaining the metaphors, they're really very, they're full of image. I mean, you could probably take any symptom that I haven't listed and you could find out what the metaphor is when you see what the function is and what it means in the life of a person. Am I making sense when I say this? Okay. So the reason of mentioning several symptoms, of course, it's useful to write them down and have some points of reference, but the more interesting thing is to understand the logic behind it. Yeah? Does it make sense? Okay. So when people lose the peripheral vision in their life, they're not looking at the details around. They're just focusing on one thing and they're forgetting to look at the landscape as they proceed in life, to go slow and smell the flowers around as well, yeah, in a metaphorical way. When people have dry eyes, liquids in the body usually are a metaphor for emotions. So when people have dry eyes, they kept themselves from crying something that was important to be cried. And very often I find this when somebody has died For example, the father dies, and they feel they have to be strong for the mother who is still alive and is old, and they keep themselves from crying to support the mother, but then they have withheld the emotion so much, they're not feeling them anymore, and their eyes are dry. So, and of course, there's many other things we can do, but I'm just talking about the emotional aspect. So when people realize this and they allow themselves to cry, this grief that they didn't cry, well, again, their eyes become more humid. And when people have crying eyes all the time, well, there's a huge sadness that they haven't been fully aware of. There's a kind of grief that they haven't fully processed as well. When people have irritated eyes, itching eyes, behind something that's itching, that's irritated, that's inflamed in the body, often is an emotion of anger. So the question is what the person is so angry about. And when the person can notice it and release the anger, then this itchiness goes away. I have found, it's been a couple of times. Time in Mexico since 2013. I go very regularly there, and I have found that the frequency of different symptoms is very different in Mexico and in Spain or France. And one symptom that is very frequent over there is pterygium.
Yeah, I know. I think you unplugged your.
Can someone say that in English? Yeah. So no.
Yeah, I know.
Pterygium. Inflammation of the tissue, creating. Yes, go ahead, Greg.
I think you unplugged
your mic yourself. And
can you hear me?
Someone wrote it?
Yeah, you unplugged your microphone.
No. Can you hear me?
Oh, Nathan was saying, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Nathan was saying your sound suddenly changed, became very echoey. You came unplugged.
Oh. Fine now?
Perfect.
Yes, maybe I touched the cord and unplugged it partially or something. Thanks for letting me know. So I was asking, so how do you say this in English? If maybe written it makes more sense. Yeah?
Pterygium, I think you meant.
Okay, so it's the same. Okay. So this is a tissue being inflamed, and it's a structural thing. So it's not like a conjunctivitis when you have a big moment of itchiness and then it goes away. This is something that stays. So behind pterygium, there seems to be something that you see that's structurally unfair or that makes you angry all the time. And I see this in Mexico a lot. And when I see how society in Spain, France, Mexico is different, and at least in Oaxaca where I go, there's a lot of social inequality and big differences between the rich and the poor, and big differences between men and women, and how women are treated with lots of violence sometimes. So I could see how a lot of people could be angry all the time, seeing at all this unfairness and injustice, if you know what I mean. Okay, so what else? What others I could mention? Myopsias, probably in English it's written something like this. Something like that? Does it make sense? No? Floating corpses, floating...
Floaters.
Okay, floaters. Okay, so floaters. In Spanish, we call them floating flies or floating, no? Orit? Yeah. So the question is, what are the bugs that are bothering you in your life at the moment? If there's lots of floating bugs, so what's bugging you so much? And when people listen about this, they often laugh very hard, and then they say, okay, I got the idea. And sometimes it takes some time to arrange, and sometimes they can arrange it immediately, but it usually makes lots of sense. What else? Well, do you have questions about the specific floating flies? I love this. Floaters, yes. Yes, oh, another one, because this one's important for our world. When people have photophobia, when they're very sensitive to the sun is an archetype of power and strength and energy. So the metaphor usually is, who is so powerful around you that you cannot bear so much energy, so much power so near you. Or the person may not yet fully own her own power. She's afraid of owning her own, light, so to say. So again, of course, there's many other ways to approach these symptoms and to support them and correct them with natural vision improvement. But as I said, I wanted to offer you just a toolkit of metaphors that may be useful, maybe, in my experience, they're useful in 80% of the time with my clients and students. Oh, crossed eyes. Yes, thank you. Crossed eyes and amblyopia, of course. I had those too. So with crossed eyes, usually crossed eyes appear when in childhood, and crossed eyes usually reflect the baby or the child sees conflict between mom and dad. Between the parents, they don't work together, so the child has to choose between mom or dad because they don't communicate well or they don't coordinate well. And when strabism is convergent, usually there is also some kind of sensation of guilt, like the child is looking at himself, herself. And when the strabism is divergent, it's as if the child has to choose between mom or dad, but the connection with both at the same time is not possible. This is what's often behind. And with amblyopia, and now I will have to speak about how I consider the eyes separately. With amblyopia, so the brain is not considering the information coming from one of the eyes and is not, then making the fusion, etc. So for amblyopia, it's good to consider, and also when there is a big difference between one eye and the other, it's important to consider which side is the directing side. And I'm sorry, because here it's going to become a little bit complex. So maybe you want to write a couple things down. People have a directing arm, right-handed or left-handed. Yeah. So we are going to interpret emotionally the eye in relation with the directing arm, the directing hand. So if the person is right-handed, the right eye is the yang eye, the eye that's related with action and will. And because these qualities have often been associated in many cultures with male and man, so then it would reflect the relationship with their own will, their own action, or a man in their life, an important man, or with their own manhood, if they're a man. And the left eye would be considered the yin eye. So the eye that reflects emotion, intuition, and because these qualities have often been related with the feminine or women, then the left eye would reflect, if there's problems in the left eye, tension with feminine aspects, with feeling emotion, with being aware of intuition, or a woman, an important woman in their life, or their own femininity, if they're women. If the person is left-handed, then we consider them reverse. The yang eye is the left and the yin eye is the right. Yeah? Now, is that clear so far? So when there's amblyopia, when the amblyopia is in the yang eye, then the person is not seeing an important man in his or her life, or is not seeing clearly, or there's tension to see their own will or their own action. And if the amblyopia is in the yin eye, then that person is having tension to see their own emotions or their own intuition or an important woman in their life. Now, and this is where it becomes a little bit more complex. Sometimes the directing eye is different from the directing arm. And actually, I have noticed that this is even very frequent in women. Their directing arm is the right hand, but the directing eye is the left eye. And what I understand from that is that these women look with more importance in their life, the emotional and relational aspects. And so when these women, their directing eye is the right and they're right-handed, then they look as more important aspects in their lives, action, projects, and these kinds of things. Am I making sense? I know there's like lots of variables at this moment, but hopefully it makes sense. Let's see, so true. And what if somebody knows already, oh, there's things coming. What if somebody knows already what was the problem? How can it be disappeared? Okay, it's a very good question. In my experience, I wouldn't be able to say percentages of this, okay? But in my experience, there's a lot of people, when they become aware of the metaphor, of the message, that makes already a big change. And some people, just by listening to my explanation, their vision becomes clearer and clearer as we're proceeding with the talk. And they see more light and more colors, and there's more clarity already, okay? Sometimes things are really old and it was just a click in their mind, and once that they can like understand it and process it, it's the end. Sometimes they concern things that are active. For example, I have one of my students, I didn't mention this one. She's seeing double. She has diplopia. So when people see double, the metaphor, of course, at the physical, there's several possibilities, but the metaphor behind the diplopia, they're divided between two options. They don't feel integrated. Like they would want to have two things that are not compatible. And they have to, again, look closely what's really their heart's choice so that they can feel integrated. So I have this student, she lives in London, she's from Spain. She would love to live near her family, but she has a very good job in London and she sees double. So probably to see one again integrated, she would have to find a good job in Spain so that she can have a nice, interesting job and be with her family, because she feels divided between these two things that are very important for her. And for this person, she hasn't found a solution yet. So I'm not saying that 100% of the time you find a solution with this approach, but there's many, many times that it's really helpful. The idea is when symptoms are messengers, the moment that you receive the message and you integrate the message, then the symptom disappears. But sometimes it takes lots of courage to be able to do this. There's people who have had to change jobs or change cities or divorce or reorient their lives to release symptoms in this way, taking seriously the message of the symptom. Well, when I look at my own path, once I had this grid of understanding, I could see why I was born with cross eyes and amblyopic and myopic, when I could understand how my mother lived her pregnancy and what was going on between my parents at the time, and how tough that period was for her and for them. So, of course, at that time, it was solved in a different way, but I could see what emotionally was in cause also at that time. And when I developed the other symptoms, I could also see how well it reflected what was happening in my life at the time, even if I solved it in a different way, because the second time it was with antibiotics as well. And the third time, it was purely with this metaphorical emotional approach, and it worked very well directly. So anyway, it's one tool that you can put alongside the other tools that you have in the toolkit, in the toolbox. And I hope that it's useful to have some more options. Let me see. If you want to raise your hand and say something, it will be nice to talk. Otherwise, I will read in the chat and react on that. Go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, I would like to just the cross dominance. You kind of skipped over that a little fast for me. So what I've seen a lot is left eye, but right hand dominance. And I'm curious if they're really left-handed originally, especially if they're older. They might have been left-handed, but told to write with the right hand. But I'm just curious a little bit more about that. You said the woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with the students and clients I have nowadays, I find that very often, most of the time, but maybe it's not your experience, but in mine, most women that are right-handed, their directing eye is the left one, not the right one. And so if I understand all these metaphors, what I would say is, okay, their right eye is the yang eye, okay, action, projects, the male qualities, and their yin eye, the left, is emotion, intuition, relationship. So they're giving more importance in their lives to emotions and relations. And if we see how women are socialized and what are the roles given in society to men and women, it makes sense. Usually we are trained or socialized or educated to take care of others and be aware of other people's needs and focus more on emotions and relations. So it makes sense in my model that it is often so. I happen to be visibly a young woman because I'm right-handed and my director eye is the right one as well. And if I look at myself, it is true that at least at this moment in my life, I'm more focused on projects and action than on relationships, family, etc. So again, it's a set of hypotheses, of propositions, and you can see how it makes sense and how it fits in your own puzzle of what you already know and what your experiences are. And my invitation is to use them with people also as hypotheses, like we or I or my colleagues have found that very often it happens to be this way. Does it make sense to you? Does it bring some clarity for you? Does it bring some insight? Is it helpful? And then you don't impose something to the other person. The person can look at it and say, oh yeah, it makes sense. Oh, doesn't talk to me. Right. And I think that's a reasonable way to use this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, just to make sure I heard you right, the yin yang, you said when you're right-handed,
okay,
the yang is right, yin is left, but if you're left-handed, left is yang,
yeah,
is yin?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're right-handed, your right side of your body is yang, I included. So the right side of your body expresses your relationship with action, projects, will, and because those qualities are very often in many cultures associated with male or men qualities or male qualities, then they often reflect a relationship also with men, important men in your life. It can be your father, a brother, a male partner, a male son, a male friend, a male boss, something like that, yeah? If you are right-handed, then your left side is the yin side. It reflects more your relationship with emotion, intuition, relationships. And because of those things have been more qualities that are associated in many cultures with female or feminine, so with women, then they can also reflect your relationship with an important woman in your life. It can be your mother, it can be a sister, it can be a female partner, it can be a daughter, it can be a female friend, a female boss, so a woman that's important in your life, yeah?
Is it the same for men and women?
Yes, in my experience, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
When you are left-handed, then your left side is the yang side, the one that's related with will, action, projects, male, men. And the right side, when you are left-handed, is related with emotion, intuition, relationship, female, feminine, women in your life. The only difference that I notice, to answer to you, Sylvia, between men and women, the only difference I notice is that in women it's more frequent than that the directing arm and the directing eye are crossed.
Yeah.
That's the only difference I have noticed. And if we see what it means, it makes sense. Like men are usually brought up and educated to be focused on will, projects, action, achievement, and women are more educated to be taking care of relationships and paying attention to emotions.
Why would they be right-handed then if the left eye is the yang and the yin eye? I still don't understand that really.
Well, most people are right-handed. I think that's, well, we're going there into theories that are of a different kind. What I have read lately is that most people are right-handed. When there's left-handed people, usually it was twins and maybe not all of them, not both of them lived to the end. And it was the second one that was the left-handed. I don't know how true that is, but it's a hypothesis that's running out there. Anyway, most people are right-handed, and frequently women have this crossed directing arm and eye. That's what I can say. Maybe I don't have the explanation for everything.
What would you say about people who are ambidextrous?
Then you ask them what makes more sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
If they're ambidextrous and they have a symptom that's much stronger in one eye than the other, you ask them, does it make more sense to you that's tension in this direction, or does it make more sense to you that's tension in that direction? And
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and they will, I mean, the key thing is that the person herself can have the insight. That it's not like I have a guessing ball and I'm going to tell you. It's you offer options and the person goes with, okay, now I get it. Yeah.
So what I notice, sorry.
That's okay, Ari, go ahead.
So what I notice as I've lost vision in my right eye, right-handed, right eye dominant, the changes in emotions, in personality, in how I present myself to the world, and the fear and the insecurities that all come up, that I think it's important for us as practitioners to think and translate this to our students, especially those who do have vision loss and who have had a lot of eye procedures. And there's so much, and you're beautifully saying the emotional side of all these issues is really so important for us to address.
I'm happy, very happy if it's useful. If it's useful, very, very honored if I contributed with some original new information.
Yes, yes.
I have a question. What about blurry vision, especially if it only happens in one eye?
Okay, if it happens in one eye, again, the question will be, is the person right-handed or left-handed, and which one of the eyes is?
If it is the dominant eye and it's a right-handed person.
Okay, then if...
And it's a left eye, right-handed.
Okay. Right-handed person, left eye. So if it's a right-handed person and it's the left eye, this person, there is something that she doesn't see very clear concerning her emotional life or her intuition or an important woman in her life or his life.
Okay.
I would say that. And if it's the dominant eye, then that part of her life is very important. And the tension is in that very important part of her life or his life. I don't know if it's a man or a woman.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Does it make sense? Is it helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
I wondered, are there any books which, what's your recommended reading?
So you can read the books by Martin Brofman, Improve Your Vision, in Findhorn Press in English, I believe. Although I have to say, of the 3 books that he wrote, the one on vision is the one I like the least, although his courses were excellent. So I would actually suggest to read all 3 books by Martin Brofman. The other 2 are called Anything Can Be Healed, also in Findhorn Press, and The Inner Cause. Yeah. And I will have to write my own, but I haven't done it yet. So, so in the meantime, that's a reference that you can use.
Fantastic, thank you.
What's the third book?
Improve Your Vision, Anything Can Be Healed, and The Inner Cause. And all of them by Martin Brofman. If you want, I can write it in the chat. Let me see. So.
Very good.
So Findhorn Press. Yeah, there it is.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
Because I like to work also with these metaphoric, but mostly I don't talk about that with people. Sometimes when I in a speech, yes, but not with my clients.
Okay.
How do you do that? So it's here in my head, but I don't talk about it. So I coach, but I don't. Sometimes I'm not sure what is better to talk about.
Yeah, I have to say that I work more often in a group setting than one-on-one. I have more of a teacher profile than individual coaching, but I have done that too. And what I do is first I validate or verify if the person is open for that kind of approach. Okay, and then I ask them, one of the possibilities we have is looking at the symptom as a metaphor. And for many people, it makes sense. If you talk about possibility and if you talk about a tendency, but not universal law, usually people open up. So there's a possibility, very often it's useful. If you are okay with it, we can explore this option and you can see if it makes sense to you or not. When you use that language, then people usually feel comfortable to go and have a look, because the worst that can happen is that it doesn't talk to them. And then if it doesn't talk to them, well, end of the story and we continue with something else. But if it talks to them, then usually it's very, very useful. And for me, it's usually a turning point in their improvement.
That's true. Sometimes I talk about it, but not often. So maybe I should do it more.
Well, and if you need sometimes this is useful and sometimes it doesn't make any difference. But sometimes people are like trusting scientific references and things like that. So if it's useful in any way, you can say that there has been a scientific research at the University of Toulouse on this. And it's not the only one, because of course, the first one that I know of is this PhD by Charles Kelly at the New School of Social Research in collaboration with the University of Columbia and blah, blah. And sometimes when you have those references, people pay more attention. They trust more the information.
This sounds good. Can you write them all in the chat or on your page maybe?
Sure. Okay.
Yes, maybe later, but...
okay. It will be easier. And we can use this time maybe for more questions or comments. Charlotte?
I wondered if there are any energy healing modalities that you've found have been helpful, which work, if there are any you would suggest, which are particularly good.
Well, I have used a lot Martin Brofman's body mirror system of healing. And he developed also a toolkit of energy healing tools that are articulated with this metaphorical understanding of symptoms. I don't know if there's people, they have a website, the Brofman Foundation. He died in 2014, but he's now widow, and a couple more people that he taught keep making workshops here and there. And I have had another experience with those techniques and have evolved my own method. So I wouldn't call it the body mirror system of healing anymore. But yeah, I use some of those. I use also energy tools. In the classes, usually that comes at the end, not because of their usefulness. For me, they're also very, very useful tools, but they come at the end more in the helping people walk a path of consciousness transformation and opening. And before we get to the point that they're open to using energy healing techniques, they have to go through things that make sense to them according to what they know and they learned. Like, let's first talk about exercises and food, because everyone knows that with good exercises and with good nutrition, you are more healthy. So first I tell them about things that are closer to what they understand or what they know. And then we go more into more subtle things. And yeah, and then at some point in time, I also teach them healing techniques with energy.
Brilliant.
If you want, we can have a more direct conversation on this, if that's something that's interesting for you.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Charlotte, where are you from, Charlotte?
I'm in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah.
So will you help us connect Nathan? Because probably you know everyone and I don't.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. It's been a wonderful speech.
Thank you.
I
Sylvia.
have a question. Yes, again. I would like to go again into the floaters, into the moscas volantes. You know, the moscas volantes.
Moscas volantes, yeah.
Yeah.
So the floaters usually represent people that are bothering, that are annoying, like nuances in your environment. Not something very terrible or dramatic, but something annoying. And when you remove that, well, the floaters tend to go away faster too. And the other Sylvia also was raising her hand.
I would like to add something to Charlotte. Charlotte, in my experience, it's like this, all the healing methods are working. The thing is, you have to choose the method which are you connected to. So it will work for you to heal people. So if you choose a method which you are just with your head and you study it, it will not work. So they are all working, but you have to choose your method.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, a method that comes easily, I think, to a person is not arduous, because otherwise the teacher becomes exhausted. A good channel for energy.
So I just found the quantum healing method. I don't know how it's in them. It came from America 20 years ago to Germany, but I don't know exactly how is the method called in America, but it's quite easy and you can't do anything wrong because you interact really with the knowledge of the client.
Great.
So you talk with him, but he doesn't or she doesn't has to dig deep inside. How to explain it? You don't have to take the things what happened in the past to the surface and to talk a lot. You do it quite quickly because you work on the energy level to dissolve it, something like this.
Brilliant.
Then it quickly.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great, because I've had some incredible healings myself from Australia. They were unbelievable and helped my hearing, for example. Didn't ask my eyes, but they were so incredible. I really believe in it now. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. I'll look that up.
Yeah, that was a very good comment to add, Sylvia. I was taking the time to read the chat while you were talking, which was very useful. And indeed, Mark is saying that Radix therapy is based on Charles Kelly's work. It's exactly, he founded the Radix Institute. So this is a direct connection. And you were asking for the studies. Maybe I can send you PDFs, Nathan, of at least one of the publications by Charles Kelly that you could put somewhere in the page of this.
Yeah, I can add it to your page so people can get it.
Yes. Now, what I told goes beyond also the Charles Kelly's work, but yeah, we can add that. Let's see, are there more questions? I've seen comments saying that there's also physical causes to all of the symptoms. Indeed, the question here is not an either or, It's just, again, having one more tool in the toolkit. Of course, there's physical causes behind each of the symptoms that I mentioned. But when we have different angles that we can approach them, well, we have more chances of success for people releasing them and going to clarity. Okay. I don't know how much time we have. I don't know if the sessions are 1.5 hours or 2 hours or...
Yeah, they're 90 minutes.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we're coming up to the end here. Want to give people a little bit of a buffer before Ray's talk at 12. But yeah, this has been really, really amazing. And we really appreciate you sharing all this with us. I know it's really good to have you here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much for your attention and your presence, and thank you, Nathan, for having me. It's the first time that I'm participating in one of these meetings with more of an international scale. I have done so in Spain, and we organized an online forum that was very successful in Spanish. But yeah, this is the first chance to connect with the international community, and I'm very, very happy and grateful for this opportunity. So, thank you.
You're very welcome here. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the great work, and thanks for all the sharing.
Thank you.